And on with us is the one and only Robert St. John, restaurateur, chef, professional traveler, columnist. Are you back home, by the way? Are you in some remote studio?
No, I am in my office, and I'm happy to be back home.
You know what I mentioned earlier, and I'm sure you weren't listening, but I mentioned this. What a great book to write. When we follow you, what you're doing and what you're able to do now, through nothing anybody gave you other than the opportunity to change your life. You and I were talking about this, from where you were kind of going off kilter as a young man, dealing with hormones and a lot of other extraneous things. And you just decided to take control of that. And this is what I want to get to a lot of other people. Look at the bonuses now. Look at the life that you're able to experience because you made those choices.
Yeah, so, I definitely consider myself blessed, and I've had an angel on my shoulder all of my life. And, I think those struggles you were talking about earlier was really at 21, I ended up in alcohol and drug rehab. I've been clean and sober ever since, but that was the start to kind of leading a more productive life. I wanted to be in the restaurant business, but the way I was living my life, there was no way that was going to happen. And so I got clean and sober and opened my first restaurant at 26. And really, Paul, all I ever wanted to do was just open one restaurant so I could wear a T-shirt and shorts to work every day. That was my goal. At 26, I had no further goal than that. And everything that's happened to me since then has really happened to me. None of it was really planned. The columns, the TV shows, the travel, the other restaurants, and all that stuff is just. And so what I tell young people when I speak to classes and everything is just always be open for opportunities and situations, and you never know really where life is going to take you as long as you just try to keep doing the right thing. And the word I use more often than any other, I end every column with it, is onward. And I use that word onward because that's kind of what's really just worked for me. I mean, challenges come up, problems come up. I had problems yesterday, like huge problems yesterday, business-wise and this and that, but you just got to keep pushing forward and keep a positive mental attitude and try to live in the solution. And, so many people don't live in the solution. They just talk about the problem and complain about the problem, and that does no good.
When in part of your column, you write, it's not about money or prestige or power or fame. It's about passion. Once you find your passion, everything will come together. Someone once said, and I quote, do what you love and as a career, and you'll never work a day in your life. And that's passion. Find your hobby. See if you can get paid for it to be successful in your professional life, or find your passion, because success always follows passion. I think that's true in so many people's cases, where even during the down times when you think, okay, I need to go back as a fry cook because I'll never make it in Nashville, you can't give up. Sooner or later, I think you'll know when the time is to say you got to do something else. But some people cut the fish bait too soon.
Yeah, it's hard to see the forest for the trees sometimes in that. But given time and retrospect, I can look back. There were three things that happened to me before I was 26 that seemed like the absolute worst thing that could ever happen in my life. Beyond my father dying, my dad died when I was 6. So take that out. I couldn't do it. So I flunked out of college when I was like 19 years old. But I'd been majoring in communications. I had worked in radio before that, and it wasn't really speaking to me. I flunked out of college, which I was totally embarrassed. I thought this is a terrible thing. But I ended up working in a restaurant and fell in love with it instantly. Had I not flunked out of college, I never probably would have started working in restaurants and found my true love. I ended up getting a DUI May 25th, 1983. After that point in time, I stopped drinking and stopped doing all the crazy partying. And that enabled me to, I mean, the DUI seemed like the second worst thing that ever happened. That enabled me to straighten out my life and get clear-headed and follow my goal. The other thing is, I opened a restaurant December 27th, 1987 was the first one. And we had to fire our chef opening night. And that also seemed like the worst. I mean, I had no money. I had a negative net worth. I had sold a little piece of land my grandfather had left me for $25,000. That was my stake in opening the restaurant. My mother had begged me, don't open a restaurant. You're going to ruin the family name. And I said, Mom, family name's not that great anyway. I'm going to do it. And so we fired our chef opening night, which seemed like another way. Here it goes. This thing's going to fail. But what it did, it made me get back in the kitchen. And I spent the next 4 years doing 90 hours a week in the kitchen, and it taught me how to become a professional chef. So all three of those things that seemed like the absolute worst thing that could happen to me turned out to be blessings. And that's what you got to do. You don't necessarily have to look for the blessing. You just have to keep pushing forward and pushing onward.
What was the name of that first restaurant?
Purple Pear Cafe. We had a good 32.
Huh? Okay.
Good 32-year run. COVID. It was a COVID casualty, but it was like a baby of mine. That's really all I wanted to do, is open a fine dining restaurant, and we had a good 3-decade plus run, and we've moved on since then.
I think, I'm just guessing on this, and I feel it, that if you did an interview, an honest interview, with a lot of men and women, young men and women, who come into college looking for something to do and saying, I'm going to do that, I'm going to be an accountant, I'm going to do this, but who are not really solid on that. Deep within them, they would love to be in that profession, to be in culinary school, and they just don't make that leap. I'm not sure why, but do you think there are more people out there who are willing to do that, want to do that? It's a passion.
To get in the food business like me?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. I think more so now than years ago. There was a stigma years ago that, that was kind of a low form of a way to make a living. But with the Food Network and all these celebrity chefs and things, I think that works negatively too, because there's so many people, there are not a lot of businesses. This is what happens, Paul. Some guy cooks a good steak in his backyard, and all his buddies say, "Oh, Joe, you ought to open up a steakhouse. That's the best steak I ever had." And so Joe goes and spends his retirement money on opening a steakhouse, and he learns pretty quick that cooking a good steak is about 5% of what you need to know to run a good restaurant. That's why bankers hate restaurants, because it's an easy business to kind of get into, and people romanticize it. Old Joe thinks he's going to be sitting at table 5 in the corner basking in his, customers' appreciation, and the dishwasher didn't show up, so he's taking out mats at midnight. It's a different deal. But yeah, I think it's considered differently today. My son is in culinary school right now. He's on a 8-year plan. He came to me at 16 and said, "I want to get in the restaurant business." And I said, "All right, if you're going to do it, you're going to do it. Here's the plan." It's an 8-year plan, and he's got about 2.5 years left. I told him, you got to get a 4-year degree, then you got to go to a culinary school for 2 years. You're going to go to the Culinary Institute of America in New York, because that's a Harvard of cooking schools. Then you're going to get out and work for other people for 2 years. So he'll go to Chicago in January. And I told him, then and only then you can come back and work for us, but you're going to start at the bottom. It doesn't matter what your degree says, what your experience is. The degree to which you rise through the ranks can be 100% dependent on you. It's not going to have anything to do with me. Because that path is really the one I wish I would have taken. I did it all backwards.
We're going to come back in just a moment. I'm going to ask you this about TV. You mentioned TV. How close did you come? Did you want to? Do you still want to do it as far as TV is concerned? There's so many opportunities out there. Sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. We'll ask the one and only Robert St. John about that. And also the new article is posted. I think it's been up there for a couple of weeks. Robert St. John's advice to upcoming graduates. A good read for 2024. Go there at SuperTalk. And Robert St. John is with us, and he's been all over the world, Italy and other places. I have a quick shot here that I saved for you. And this is Japanese cuisine. Do you know a lot about Japanese cuisine?
I like it. I don't know a lot about it. I like to consume it.
Fans of Japanese cuisine might be familiar with onigiri. Onigiri, Onigiri, otherwise known as Japanese rice balls. All right? In Japan, more discerning palates are willing to pay up to 10 times more than the average price of around $1 for the privilege of eating armpit onigiris. Armpit. Oh. That's where a cute girl takes the rice ball, rubs it over her armpit. This supposedly infuses the rice ball with girls' sweat, making it quite the delicacy for some of the men who eat the rice balls. I'm just giving you ideas for your next restaurant.
I think I'm going to pass on that one, Paul. Thank you, though.
I can't see where this would catch on with the female customers if it was Bubba's rice balls. I don't think that would make it, but apparently they're paying $10 for a little rice ball in that restaurant.
Dude,
that's weird.
I'm not going to swing. I'm not going to swing at the softball you just threw up there. I'm just going to let that go.
I saw you shying away from that one. Like, I don't want to talk about that one. All right, look. Yeah. Well, let me ask you this: have you ever gotten close to a TV thing, or if you pitched one, or everything that you've done and where you've gone, especially with a little bit of radio experience and everything else, you're a perfect guy for that. But is that in your future, or where do you stand with that?
There have been several times. I had a pilot that was just about to be picked up on Turner South Network years ago when it was around, and right before the deal got signed, Fox Sports bought the network just to get the Braves games, and so that fell through. And then I had another show that TLC was going to pick up, and I was about to head out to Hollywood to sign a deal, and then the Oprah Winfrey Network bought that network, and I ended up in the studios of the Food Network in New York about a year or so after that, pitching a show that I didn't believe in, and somebody else brought me there to do it, and they passed. So we ended up producing a show called Palate to Palate that ran on MPB. We did 5 seasons of that show. It was Wyatt Waters and me and my buddy Anthony Thaxton, who has co-founded the Institute for Southern Storytelling with me at Mississippi College. He and I did a documentary on Walter Anderson that actually won a couple of regional Emmys. Our upcoming documentary coming out of the Institute of Southern Storytelling is on Eudora Welty. It'll also have a companion book, and that'll be out in September. So I'm not necessarily looking to do TV for myself, but what I'm really enjoying these days are producing these documentaries at the Institute for Southern Storytelling. We founded at Mississippi College really just over a year ago. We have so much content that the Walter Anderson doc went nationwide. Over 325 PBS stations, I think over 1,300 airings, all prime time and top 100 markets. Got a couple of regional Emmys, and this Eudora Welty doc should do better. So that's what we're doing. We're taking Mississippi stories, positive Mississippi stories, and spreading the word. That was my goal with Anderson, was from people from Portland, Maine to Portland, Oregon know who Walter Anderson was. And by the end of that run, we did well. But we're doing music and all sorts of great stories at the Institute there.
That book with Walter, with Wyatt, as far as the trip to Italy, is a keeper. That is incredible.
He and I did 4 books together. We had a blast traveling together, and that Italian book was probably the most fun to do of any of them.
Let me ask you this. Did anybody, speaking of TV, I'll drop this subject, but speaking of TV, did anybody some of the early people ever add to that influence of your love for cooking? And we're talking about some of the people who are no longer alive.
Yeah. So when I was a kid, I was born in '61. So the only cooking shows really that I can remember as a kid were Justin Wilson, who later became a friend of mine and would come in the restaurant a lot. And he and I got to know each other fairly well.
Wow.
He was a great
Yeah.
guy. And then Julia Child, who I ended up having breakfast with a couple of times, great lady. But, I never really wanted to, my goal wasn't to be in the kitchen. Like I said earlier, I ended up in the kitchen because it was, I had to do it. We fired our chef opening night and somebody had to do it. It was a blessing because it got me back there.
Hmm.
But as a kid, I was more interested in consuming food than I was cooking. And my grandmother was a great cook. And so,
Yeah.
I look back to her influence on me, but I was into music mostly as a child, and I probably wanted to be the next Robert Plant or something like that if you would have asked me. I think there was a point in my
You.
life I wanted to be Darren Stevens. I thought advertising executive sounded pretty cool, and
Yeah.
being married to a witch wasn't so bad either. That could do things.
You remember a guy? Was he on TV when you were young? Named the Frugal Gourmet.
Yeah. Jeff,
You
can't remember his name. Jeff something.
apparently he got in trouble
Jeff
with
Smith,
something.
maybe.
See me. I forgot what the guy's name
Yeah,
was, but
yeah.
they yanked him off
There
because
was
of
something
something.
bad. I think it
Yeah,
was a pretty bad thing. He ended up with some kind of sexual something.
child
I remember.
molestation
So
or something. I forgot what
I
it
think
was, but
so. Jeff
I mean,
Smith, I'm going to say was his name. Yeah.
he was riding high. I
I,
mean, this guy was like, yeah.
I never watched that
All
show, but
right,
I remember when that happened.
Justin Wilson was was an incredible guy. But
Yeah.
and a lot of people don't know this. Not only the stories and the albums he had, but his cooking show and all the comedy routines and everything else. But when I just started out in radio, he actually was one of the very few people. There was no talk radio back then at all.
Yeah.
Prior to, while the Fairness Doctrine was on, we can thank Ronald Reagan for expanding talk radio.
Right.
But he was doing a 5-minute political commentary. Above everything else, we were carrying it on the station. A 5-minute
Yeah.
political commentary every single day. And I thought, this guy's all over the place.
Yeah. He was a really sharp guy. That accent was a character. The
Yes.
Cajun, kind of accent he used to do storytelling. He was a great storyteller, and he kind of that started. I think it was in the insurance business or something, and he would a little like Jerry Clower would go around and
Yes.
speak at banquets and things like that, and that's kind of how he hit. But he was a genuinely nice man and very complimentary. He wouldn't let you call him a chef. He'd just say, "I'm a good cook," and it was very generous and. I got to know him later in life, went to a few of his birthday parties, but he was a solid storyteller, and that's what we're doing at this Storytelling Institute, or telling those kind of stories.
Your last trip to Italy was when?
I just got back 4 days ago from Europe. I had five groups. I had one in Spain for 10 days, and I had three in Tuscany, and then the final group was in England and Scotland, and fell in love. Wrote about that this week, so the one about to be
Mm-hmm.
posted is about how I fell in love with Scotland. I had never been to Scotland before, but I had 26 people. All of them had traveled with me before. Some of them, it was their seventh trip with me. And so it's just like a bunch of friends going together. But I'm going to tell you, Scotland, Tuscany, when I first went to Tuscany years ago, it really connected. It felt a lot like the American South in that it's an agrarian society, but instead of cotton and soybeans, it's grapes and olives. But the people are hospitable and friendly. They love to share a meal. They're family oriented, and Scotland was the same way. Not as agrarian, but the people were great, and the weather was awesome, and so much history
Yeah.
there, and the climate. Love Scotland.
The saddest thing in the world to me right now is for people who have the opportunity to do that, and they see and talk to the people, look at the crime rate, see people enjoying life, see the streets and everything, and then you come back and you see photos of the streets of San Francisco or Chicago or what is going on as far as crime and snatch and grab and the open border. and they look at it in the glimmer on it, the United States of America, we got to grab it and reshine it, man, because we're in trouble. We are in trouble. Robert St. John, thank you, sir. Final thoughts here in 10 seconds?
You know what, Paul? I just want to say thank you for doing what you do for the state of Mississippi. We love your show. You are good. You've been doing this for so long, and we really appreciate you. You are truly an asset to our state.
I'm still a novice. Only been doing 55 years. Still a novice. I don't have the recipes down yet. So thank you, man. Appreciate it very much. Robert St. John.